Have you ever wondered why you keep enduring situations that drain your energy and rob you of your peace of mind? Don't worry. We've all been there, tied to people and circumstances that keep us in a vicious cycle. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual, but today I'm going to give you one. Here are 13 situations in which it is better to walk away and leave everything behind. Thanks to Stoic philosophy, I'll provide you with tools and practical examples to find serenity and control over your own destiny amid adversity. It's not about giving up, but about knowing when it's time to leave. Let's break down these 13 clear signs that indicate it's time to let go of what doesn't serve you and make room for what truly matters. But before we begin, if you find value in these videos, please subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. Let's start. 1. Abusive relationships. No one starts a relationship expecting it to become a battlefield. But sometimes the person who should lift you up drags you down. Abusive relationships, whether romantic, familial, or friendships, aren't just about physical blows and shouting. Soft words can cut deeper than a knife. Pay attention to the signs. If you constantly feel belittled, manipulated, or fearful, it's time to leave. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what we can control. You can't change another person, but you can change your situation. Talk to someone you trust, seek support, and make an exit plan. Walking away is an act of self-love. Remember, you are not responsible for other people's demons, but you are responsible for your own happiness. If you're in a boat full of leaks, it's time to swim to shore. Solid and safe ground is waiting for you. 2. Toxic environments. Toxic environments are filled with negativity, rumors, and envy. Working in such a place drains your energy. First, recognize that you're in a toxic environment. Sometimes we get so used to bad weather that we forget there's sunshine outside. Then, evaluate your options. Can you change teams or move to another office? If you can't move physically, do so mentally. Practice indifference to gossip and keep your integrity intact. Create a small personal refuge to recharge your energy. This doesn't mean building a fortress in the middle of the office, but finding moments and spaces of tranquility. A walk during lunch or a chat with a friend outside that toxic environment can make a big difference. And if you decide to leave, cultivate your own garden of kindness and professionalism. Life is too short to waste it in a place that dims your light. As Epictetus said, in a world full of storms, be your own lighthouse. 3. Codependent relationships. In a codependent relationship, your happiness and well-being depend almost entirely on another person. It's living for the other person's needs, forgetting your own. It may sound noble, but in reality it's a trap that ensnares both parties in a toxic and destructive dynamic. Recognize that you're in a codependent relationship and work on your emotional independence. Spend time rediscovering your interests and personal goals. Ask yourself what you truly want and need outside the relationship. Set healthy boundaries and seek support. Sometimes the only way to break the cycle of codependency is to create distance. This doesn't mean you don't love the other person, but that you love yourself enough to prioritize your well-being and growth. Remember, true happiness is not found in another person, but within yourself. Letting go doesn't mean giving up, but accepting that some things cannot be. Life is too short to live it trapped in a relationship that consumes you. 4. Continuous disrespect. Some people seem to have a PhD in disrespect, ignoring your boundaries and challenging your dignity. If someone constantly disrespects you, it's time to decide if that person deserves to stay in your life. Set clear boundaries and communicate them assertively. If this person repeatedly ignores your requests and continues to behave disrespectfully, it's clear they don't value your well-being. You need to surround yourself with people who respect and value you, not those who make you feel small or insignificant. It's not about making a drama out of every situation, but recognizing when a relationship is toxic and taking the necessary steps to protect your peace of mind. Practicing detachment doesn't mean you're cruel or insensitive. It's an act of self-preservation and self-love. To apply this, start by setting clear boundaries and communicating them assertively. If the other person doesn't respect them, you have your answer. This is where the courage to say goodbye comes into play. It's not easy, of course, but it's necessary. Another strategy is to lean on people who do respect and value you. They will be your safety net, reminding you that you deserve to be treated with dignity. Remember, your well-being is a priority. If someone can't understand that, then it's time for that person to leave your life. Distance is sometimes the greatest act of self-love. Burn this into your mind. Self-respect is the first step to gaining the respect of others. 5. Incompatible goals. If your goals and those of another person are completely opposite, it may be better to take separate paths. It's not about giving up, but being honest with yourself and others. Accept what you can't change and focus on what is under your control. Imagine you're in a relationship where you dream of a quiet life in the countryside, but your partner craves the hustle and bustle of the big city. It's like one wants to write poetry under an oak tree, and the other wants to compose electronic music in a skyscraper. Both scenarios are valid and wonderful, but clearly not compatible. Trying to force harmony between two such distinct visions can lead to frustration, resentment, and eventually a much more painful breakup. The same happens in the professional realm. Perhaps you work on a project where you prioritize innovation and creativity, while your colleagues only seek stability and following the same path as always. It's like you're building a spaceship while they want to make tricycles. Both have their place in the world, but pretending one can transform into the other is a waste of time and energy. If in your heart you know that your goals and those of the other person or project are irreconcilable, then it's time to make a decision. Remember that life is too short to waste it on lost battles. It's better to take a new course that takes you where you really want to be. And don't forget, as Marcus Aurelius said, the art of living is not about avoiding struggles, but knowing which ones are worth fighting. 6. Manipulation and control. Manipulation and control can manifest in various ways, from friends who make you feel guilty to bosses who micromanage your work. Imagine you're a ship sailing through the ocean of life. You have a clear course, your own dreams and goals, but suddenly someone boards and starts giving orders, constantly changing your direction. They tell you what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. At first, you might think this person is trying to help you, that they have good intentions. However, soon you realize it's not the case. They're manipulating you to follow their agenda, not yours. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control and accept what we can't change. Set clear boundaries and learn to say no. This small word, though sometimes difficult to pronounce, is your shield against manipulation. Saying no doesn't mean being selfish or insensitive, but protecting your well-being and values. Surround yourself with people who respect your autonomy. Seek out those who support and encourage you to be the best version of yourself, not those who try to mold you to their liking. Healthy relationships are based on mutual respect and understanding, not control and manipulation. Walking away from those who try to control every aspect of your life is vital for your emotional and mental well-being. Stoic philosophy can be your compass on this journey, helping you stay on the right course. Always remember to set boundaries, say no when necessary, and surround yourself with people who respect your freedom. As a quote I love says, "True freedom is living as you wish, without others dictating your life." Will you continue to let others steer your ship, or will you take the helm and sail where you truly want to go? 7. Illegal or immoral situations. When you find yourself in illegal or immoral situations, walking away can be the best option to maintain your integrity and safety. Life has a special way of putting you in tight spots, making you question your own values and decisions. But what happens when these situations cross the line of what is legally or morally acceptable? It's in these moments that Stoic philosophy can offer us a valuable perspective. Imagine you're in a company where practices are, at best, questionable. Perhaps you've noticed that some actions might be skirting the edge of legality. You've been told that everyone does it, or that it's just a minor slip. But deep down, you feel that knot in your stomach, that discomfort telling you something isn't right. This is where manipulation and control come into play. Often, people around you might try to convince you that you're overreacting or that your morality is a hindrance to success. They manipulate you to doubt your own principles, to feel guilty for wanting to do the right thing. But is it worth selling your soul for momentary peace? Stoic philosophy teaches us to value personal integrity over external approval. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoics, said that the best way to defend yourself is not to be like them. In other words, don't become what you despise. If you're entangled in illegal or immoral situations, walking away might be the best option to maintain your integrity and safety. It's not a sign of weakness, but of strength and wisdom. What can you do in these situations? First, acknowledge the problem. Denial only prolongs the pain and guilt. Talk to someone you trust. Seek legal advice if necessary. Don't isolate yourself. Isolation is the fertile ground where manipulation grows. Second, evaluate your options. Sometimes the exit isn't immediate or easy, but planning your escape can give you the strength you need to act. And finally, act. Don't stay in contemplation. Action is the antidote to manipulation and control. 8. Personal stagnation. Personal stagnation can manifest in your work, relationships, or daily routines. If a situation doesn't allow you to evolve, it's time to act. Have you ever felt trapped, as if you're walking on a treadmill going nowhere? First, let's have a little reflection. Imagine you're a tree. Trees need space, light, and nutrients to grow. If they remain in a small pot for too long, their roots get tangled and stop growing, preventing the tree from flourishing. Similarly, you need space to expand, both physically and emotionally. If you find yourself in a limiting situation, it's like being in a pot that's too small. Personal stagnation can manifest in many ways. In your work, in your relationships, in your daily routines. Maybe you feel like you're not learning anything new, that your skills aren't improving, or that you simply don't feel inspired. These are the moments when you need to consider making a change. How do you know if a change is really what you need? Think about Stoic philosophy. The Stoics believed you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. If a situation or relationship doesn't allow you to evolve, then perhaps it's time to act. It's not about making impulsive decisions, but evaluating your circumstances honestly. 9. Loss of identity. Loss of identity can be subtle. One day you realize you no longer like coffee. You've stopped reading those books you once loved, or you no longer laugh as easily. Have you ever stopped to think if you're really the one living your life? Or have you become a secondary character in someone else's story? Sometimes, in the hustle and bustle of daily life, in relationships and in obligations, we lose the sense of who we are. And that, my friend, is a real tragedy. Loss of identity can be subtle. One day you realize you no longer like coffee, you've stopped reading those books you once loved, or you no longer laugh as easily. Why? Because you've been too busy trying to fit into someone else's mold. Whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even a job, it's easy to lose yourself trying to please others. The Stoics teach us to stay true to our values, not to let external circumstances dictate who we are. Reflect on what you truly value and what makes you unique. Take an inventory of your interests and values. How many of them have you set aside? How many have you adopted without realizing it just to fit in? Let's take a common situation. A romantic relationship. At first, everything is new and exciting, and it's normal to want to share and adapt. But what happens when that adaptation turns into a loss? You start watching movies you don't like, listening to music you can't stand, changing the way you dress, and you don't recognize the person you see in the mirror. You've lost your identity in the attempt to be loved. The solution isn't easy, but necessary. Reevaluating your environment can be uncomfortable. It means questioning relationships, jobs, and situations you've taken for granted. If a relationship or situation makes you lose your sense of who you are, your interests, and your values, it's important to consider walking away. It's not about selfishness, but about self-preservation. You can start with small steps. Spend time on activities you truly enjoy, even if it means doing them alone. 10. Unrealistic expectations. When someone constantly expects you to meet impossible expectations, it's like being thrown into the ocean hoping you'll magically learn to swim. These types of demands generate constant stress and may require a difficult but liberating decision. Distancing yourself. Expectations are like funhouse mirrors. Sometimes they show us a distorted image of who we really are or can become. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what is within our control and to let go of what is not. If someone in your life imposes expectations that seem out of a science fiction novel, it's time to ask yourself, is this under my control? Let's take an example. Imagine you have a boss who expects you to work 60 hours a week without rest and also maintain a perfect work-life balance. Sounds impossible, right? These types of expectations are not only unrealistic, but also slowly consume you, leaving you without energy and motivation. The best way to address these situations is first to recognize that these expectations are not reasonable, and second, to communicate your boundaries clearly and respectfully. Distancing yourself doesn't always mean cutting ties drastically. Sometimes it can be a matter of redefining your relationship with that person. How to do it? Imagine you're at a party and the music is too loud. Instead of leaving immediately, you could find a quieter corner or adjust the volume to a level that's comfortable for you. The same goes for unrealistic expectations. Adjust the volume of those expectations until they align with what you can handle without sacrificing your well-being. Adopting a Stoic approach and focusing on what truly matters is essential. Instead of trying to please everyone, focus on your own values and goals. 11. Lack of reciprocity. If you give your all in a relationship and don't receive even half of what you give, it's time to reevaluate. Lack of reciprocity deeply affects you. You can be the most generous person in the world, but we all have a limit. Imagine yourself as an emotional bank. If you're always making deposits in others' accounts without receiving deposits in yours, eventually you'll run out of funds. And of course, when your emotional balance is in the red, who are you going to turn to? It's a phenomenon we often see but sometimes find hard to accept. We tell ourselves we're being good friends, good lovers, good children. We convince ourselves that it's okay to give without expecting anything in return, because that's what we've been taught. But you know what? Even the Stoics, with their philosophy of accepting and adapting, knew that reciprocity is fundamental for a balanced life. It's not about being selfish, but recognizing your own worth and understanding that you deserve to receive as much as you give. What can you do when you find yourself in an unbalanced relationship? First, it's important to recognize the problem. It can be hard to admit that someone you care about isn't reciprocating at your level of giving, but this is the first step toward change. Talk to that person openly and honestly. Sometimes people don't even realize they're not reciprocating adequately. Communication can be a bridge to better understanding and greater balance. If after talking things don't change, maybe it's time to reconsider the relationship. 12. Repetition of negative cycles. If you feel trapped in an endless cycle, facing the same problems and getting the same disappointing results, it's time to change the scene. Have you ever felt trapped in an endless cycle, like you're on a rusty merry-go-round that never stops? Yes, those times when you find yourself repeating the same mistakes, facing the same problems, and getting the same disappointing results. It's like being in a bad movie you can't escape from. And sure, there comes a time when you wonder, am I destined for this? To live in an eternal déjà vu of disasters? Well, the good news is no. You're not doomed to always repeat the same thing. Those negative cycles aren't a divine curse or an inescapable karma. Often the solution can be as simple as walking away from the situation that traps you. Yes, it's that simple. like changing the channel because the program you're watching bores you. Sometimes the best thing you can do is change the scene, the environment, the focus. Think of it this way. If a plant doesn't grow in a place, what do? You change its pot. You move it to where there's better light and better soil. Well, you are that plant. If you stay in the same barren soil, you won't grow. Breaking those cycles involves making difficult but necessary decisions. Maybe it's about leaving a job that doesn't satisfy you, distancing yourself from toxic people, or abandoning habits you know are harmful. This is where Stoic philosophy comes in, that ancient wisdom that teaches us to focus on what we can control and let go of what is beyond our reach. 13. Threat to mental health. Mental health is fundamental and should be treated seriously. If a situation affects your mental well-being, it's time to reconsider. Have you noticed how your mind becomes a sort of daily battlefield? No, it's not an exaggeration. We live in a world that constantly bombards us with demands, expectations, and constant pressures. And amid all this chaos, your mental health is relegated to the background. However, it's time to seriously reflect on this and put a stop to it. Think of your mind as a garden. Each thought is a seed. Some of those seeds are beautiful flowers that nourish your spirit, but others are weeds that choke your well-being. Constant anxiety, depression, and chronic stress are those weeds that, if left unchecked, can take control of your mental garden. Stoic philosophy teaches us to remain calm and focus on what we can control. But sometimes, to protect our mental health, we must make drastic decisions. Have you heard of the boiled frog? If you put a frog in hot water, it will jump out immediately. But if you put it in cold water and heat it slowly, the frog won't realize the danger until it's too late. That's what happens with chronic stress and anxiety. We adapt to unhealthy levels of stress without realizing it until our mental health is on the verge of collapse. And what's the solution? Sometimes the only way out is to cut it out. It's easy to say you need to reconsider your situation, but hard to do, right? This is where Stoic courage comes into play, identifying and, if necessary, abandoning those situations that are harming you. It could be a job that consumes you, a toxic relationship, or even a self-destructive habit. Imagine you have a backpack full of stones. Each stone represents a worry or a stress. If you've completed this lesson to the end, share in the comments. Sometimes a timely retreat is a victory. Please subscribe, activate notifications, and leave your comment so YouTube knows these videos are useful to you. I invite you to watch the 2 most recent videos you'll find recommended. I sincerely appreciate your time and support. See you in the next adventure.